Big Apple Blitz with Anthony Ricardo and Matt O'Leary.
With the fourth pick in the NFL draft, the New York Giants select. What is going on, Anthony? I am so sorry, my friend. That is a tough way to slice it. No victory Monday today. This is a sad Monday on Big Apple Blitz.
It's a win that feels like a loss, similar to the ones that we had last season when the Giants, once again, were in the driver's seat for a top pick, won some games, and ended up picking 6th overall. Happened again yesterday. New York Giants entered week 17 with the number 1 overall pick. Seemed like there was no way they could lose that pick. And now they're picking number 4. I just don't get it. I mean, like, this team always finds a way to mess it up. They can't even lose properly. A 10-game losing streak, all for naught. Endured 2 months of losing just to win a meaningless game and screw themselves out of the top pick. It's unbelievable.
I don't think either of us had Drew Lock going the fuck off on our bingo card against the Indianapolis Colts. I went to pull up the stat line from this game because it's just absolutely insane. 73.9 completion percentage, 309 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns, also ran for 1 if I'm not mistaken, and a 155.3 passer rating in this game after posting a 58.7 passer rating and 48.6 passer rating the last 2 times we saw him. What the hell happened?
I mean, that was the best Giants quarterback performance arguably since 10 years ago. Drew Lock is the first Giants quarterback since Eli Manning in 2014 to throw for over 300 yards, throw for 4+ passing touchdowns, and rush for 1+ rushing touchdown in a single game. Hasn't happened again since 2014, Eli Manning. It was a truly historic performance from Drew Lock. He basically said, you know what? The Giants, you guys haven't treated me all that great this year, so I'm going to make sure that your future is screwed. That's what I think Drew Lock was up to yesterday. It was his mission to screw the Giants' future because they screwed his present. So, Drew Lock, screw you. I mean, awesome performance, and I got to say, it was nice to watch a Giants quarterback play that well. It's been a long time. I mean, sure, Daniel Jones had 5 passing touchdowns versus Washington on the road as a rookie. We haven't had a home performance from a Giants quarterback like that since Eli Manning 10 years ago. So it was nice to see that performance from Drew Lock, but it also stung really badly, like lemon juice in a cut, like salt in a wound. That one hurt really badly, Drew Lock.
Yeah, and First State Jets, I'm sorry. He says, Shedeur better return those cleats. Yeah, I mean, yeah, so Shedeur Sanders rocking the red and blue Giants cleats in his bowl game, which Colorado ended up losing. Now the Giants with the 4th pick no longer have the 1st overall pick. The Pats hold the 1st overall pick. I don't think they're selecting a quarterback. Now, they could trade out of that for a haul. So Giants, unfortunately, they had this right in their grasp, but now they might have to give up a big package to get up to the number 1 pick now, which it's still possible that the Giants get a quarterback. It's just going to be a little bit harder now because you're likely going to have to trade up. I guess we could eventually get to the scenario where the Giants land the number 1 pick. It's still in play, but a lot has to break right.
Yeah, way too much has to break right, and they have to get a lot of help from a lot of bad teams. I'll go ahead and bring up the scenario that gets the Giants the number 1 pick. First of all, have to lose next week versus Philadelphia. Eagles might be resting their starters. It's not certain just yet, just because they might want to get Saquon Barkley the rushing record, and if they do, getting it against the former team is the perfect idea for Saquon Barkley. So he might play next week, and the Giants might get clapped. But if the Eagles do decide to rest their starters, it's a winnable game for the Giants, but it's still a must-lose game for the Giants. And then you need wins from the Cleveland Browns over the Baltimore Ravens. We need wins from the Tennessee Titans over the Houston Texans and the New England Patriots over the Buffalo Bills. If all of those 4 things happen, the Giants will be back in position for the number 1 overall pick. But if any of those things don't go our way, we're not picking number 1. We're picking anywhere from 2 all the way down to 9. If the Giants win next week, they could be holding the 9th overall pick in the draft. So a very costly victory yesterday. That's really all you could say about it. Sure, some great things to take away. Got some nice young players, some rookies. Think we found our kick returner of the future. I don't give a shit. We don't have our quarterback of the future. That was a win that ultimately did screw our future.
Yeah, and Connor Hughes tweeted it out yesterday. I wanted to pull up what he had to say on here. If you give me a second. This was during the Browns-Miami game, but if the Browns come back and win, the Giants would move up to number 3. That didn't happen. The Patriots slated at number 1 face the Bills, who are locked in. They may rest starters. Titans play the Texans. They could rest starters. So that would play a factor. But unfortunately, the Dolphins win. So the glass half empty approach is this, that if the Browns lose, which they did, and then lose to the Ravens next week, and the Patriots beat the Bills and the Titans lose to the Texans, then Tennessee and Cleveland have the number 1 picks, number 1 and number 2 pick, and both those teams need quarterbacks.
So I'm not entirely convinced by that because I saw the Deshaun Watson contract restructuring. That contract makes it impossible to move off of him in 2025. It makes it even harder in 2026. It looks to me like the Browns are planning on going with Deshaun Watson next year and building around him in some capacity. I don't think that's a good idea, but it looks like that's what they're planning on doing, is trying to win with Deshaun Watson. So they might not take a quarterback. They might not force it. They might just wait for the right opportunity in a future year. So that's possible. But it also is possible that they take a quarterback. The Titans, I think, need to take a quarterback. Will Levis is not the future of that franchise. The Giants are absolutely in a position where they either need to stick and pick and take the best quarterback available or trade up and get one. But what this really emphasizes for me, something I've been saying all along for like months, this offseason, it's not just selecting a franchise quarterback. It's also signing a solid bridge quarterback. And that can't be more true than it is right now. The Giants have to actually spend money at the quarterback position this offseason. It's something that Giants fans don't want to do. They just paid Daniel Jones all that money. They don't want to pay another quarterback. You have to go out there and you have to pay one of a Kirk or a Justin Fields or Russell Wilson. It doesn't matter, because at the best you're getting a Sam Darnold, at the worst you're getting a Jacoby Brissett, and you need to find one of those two things. You either need a Brissett bridge for a rookie, or you need a Sam Darnold so that your rookie never sees the field. But you have to sign a bridge, and you have to draft a rookie, whether it's in the first or second round, have to spend the premium pick on the quarterback position. But it did just get a lot harder to do that. And adding on to this, you know my mindset, Matt. Throw darts at the board at quarterback. If you take a quarterback this year and you don't like him, take another one the following year. It's a lot harder to do when you had to trade up and get that quarterback in the first place. So it's kind of, I don't see how you could go with the dart throwing mentality if you trade up to number 1 and spend all that extra capital to take that quarterback.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. Unfortunately, if you want to get up to the number 1 pick, if it's at 9, good luck to you, because we saw what just happened with the Bears and the Panthers. I believe it was the same spot, was the number 1 and number 9 pick, if memory serves correct, and it was a lot to go up to get them. But even at 4, you're probably having to give up next year's first-round pick also. So then you kind of take yourself out of the running to take one of those guys in the 2026 class, which a lot of people think is potentially better than this upcoming draft class.
It definitely has the potential to be. I mean, you've got Garrett Nussmeier is going to be in that class, and with another year of development at LSU, he could be an absolute star prospect in 2026. And Drew Aller, same story for him. Going back to Penn State for another year, he could end up being a star in 2026 coming out of Penn State. So there is an argument to make, and a lot of Giants fans have made it. Wait another year. Hopefully Arch comes out. It's not going to happen, and the Giants can't wait. Again, you take the dart throwing mentality, but the problem is, if you do have to trade up, that's a lot harder to do, as I mentioned. But I'll say this. I mean, this is early, and I don't know where I'm going to stand on this take in April. But right now, I have conviction for Cam Ward. I don't have that necessarily for Shedeur Sanders, but I have a lot of film and stuff to watch and research to do between now and April. Maybe I will have that conviction. Right now, I would be willing to trade up for Cam Ward because I think he is a franchise quarterback. I need to watch Shedeur Sanders a little bit more before I get bought in on that. But I'd trade up for Cam and roll the dice, and I just would try my absolute best to not include a future first-round pick in that trade. If you can make it a future second-round pick and this year's second, maybe 2 twos, get the deal done. But I would just want to keep that first-round pick in my back pocket in case I got to go quarterback again in 26.
Yeah, for me right now, I definitely like Cam Ward a lot more than I like Shador Sanders. There are some things from that game, and not just the bowl game, but I thought it was highlighted in that game. I think sometimes when he's pressured, he like just falls back in the pocket way too much. And that scares me at the next level because you can't do that. And we saw, or I saw at least, Zach Wilson do that a lot his first 3 years in the league with the Jets. Now, if you can correct that, there are some things to like about him, but if he's falling into some of the habits that we've seen him have at Colorado, there's risk involved there. So I view him as very boom or bust, where I think Cam Ward has about the same ceiling, but I think has a little bit of a higher floor, if that makes sense.
It's very funny because Giants fans feel opposite. They feel like Shador Sanders has the higher floor. They look at the Hall of Fame bloodline and they look at the pro style offense that he ran with Pat Shermer at Colorado, and they view his pre snap processing as reasons for him to have the higher floor. Like at the very worst, he'll be an average starter, but he doesn't have the superstar potential of Cam Ward. That's the argument that a lot of Giants fans make, at least in the comment section of Fireside Giants. And I've also entertained that argument because I see it. But you do make a good point. He has some traits that are very detrimental to quarterback play at the next level. You get away with it in college. It's tougher to get away with at the next level. And it's a Zach Wilson trait, like you just said, with the drifting back in the pocket. But I will also make this argument. His high pressure to sack ratio, his tendency to drift in the pocket, these are also knocks that people had on Jaden Daniels in this past draft class. Jaden Daniels quickly got that coached right out of him and is now tremendous when navigating the pocket. I saw him play last night versus the Falcons. Incredible stuff navigating the pocket. So if you can get the right coach in place to develop Shador, maybe he could have an instant impact like a Jaden Daniels. I don't know. It's just kind of tough to project with both of these guys because it's not like either of these guys are slam dunk SEC prospects. They're ACC and Big 12 guys who have had rocky career paths to get to the number one overall selection. So it's really tough to project these guys.
It is hard to project, and coaching does matter a ton. So the Giants have to get that right. I'm assuming they're moving on from Brian Daboll. It just kind of feels like the direction that it's going. We'll see what they end up doing with Joe Schoen here. It's going to be really interesting offseason for the Giants. Wild Wave chimes in and says, Joe Schoen can't wait. This fan base is going to explode. He has to grab a quarterback this year. Jalen Milroe might be an option. How do you feel about Milroe as the third quarterback off the board?
If you have to take the third quarterback off the board, I guess you do. But I don't know. Like, there's a difference between taking a quarterback that you think is a fringe first round player or fringe top 20 player at 5-ish. And then there's a difference between taking a second, third round guy at 5-ish. And I don't think the Giants necessarily need to reach that hard. It's very tough. And that's the Joe Schoen can't wait part of it is why I advocate for cleaning house. I don't want a desperate GM in here making desperate moves. He has to take a quarterback no matter what in the first round. If you bring in a new GM, he doesn't necessarily have to because he's got this year plus next year plus probably the year after that to build this roster. He can make long-term decisions. Joe Schoen has to buy wins in 2025. He is going to make desperate, short-sighted decisions that are not going to have the long-term success of the team in mind. And that's what I'm afraid of. So I think the only way forward is to clean house. However, winning that game, Alex made this great point on Fireside Giants, winning that game yesterday makes this team less attractive for GM and head coach candidates because it no longer has the number one overall pick, and they might have to sacrifice assets. So by winning that game, Schoen and Daboll might have earned themselves a 2025 season because now it's way harder to find their replacements. And that's a really, really ugly reality to come from this win.
It is, but I agree with you. I think you're right on that. It does make the Giants less attractive. If they had the number one, or even if it was the number 2 pick, that is significantly more attractive than having, like, I don't know, if they end up picking right now, they're 4th. If they end up picking 9th, that makes it even worse. I don't know what the play is for the Giants, but clearly a very, very, very pivotal game coming up against the Eagles this week.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very pivotal game, but listen, when I look at that game that we just won, that was one of the most pivotal games that the franchise has played in the last 10 years. I mean, that literally could have secured them the number one overall pick. It would have been a wrap. Their future would have been much easier to determine. And now it's very hard to figure out. Very, very difficult to project where this team is going to go. I will share one piece of positive news, though.
Sure.
Malik Neighbors and his big performance, 2 touchdowns, 170 yards. Obviously, that's a positive in of itself, but I will mention my 20-man dynasty league that I'm required to mention in every episode of Big Apple Blitz. Malik Neighbors just won me the championship.
See, I had Malik Neighbors, but I was going against T. Higgins, so I still lost. My guy put up 187 fantasy points against me. I put up 160 and lost. Tough to swallow.
Yeah, that's brutal. I came back and won. It looked like I think on Sleeper, it told me I had like an 85% chance of losing. I won. So I've got Jahmyr Gibbs left to play, but I've already got a 1-point lead and he has nobody else left to play. So we did it. My NFL Sim Dynasty League victory.
So are you starting him or are you pulling him and leaving it empty?
I didn't even think of that.
Right? Like, is that a dick move? Because I feel like that's a very not controversial, but I feel like that's batted around a lot amongst the fantasy circle. Do you play or do you pull your guy if you're already up and have the win?
I mean, the absolute worst case scenario would be that he fumbles on the first play of the game and then snaps his leg and then I lose. Yeah. I don't see that happening though. So I'm gonna ride with Jahmyr.
Okay. I respect you for it.
I didn't even think of that though. I guess that is something I could consider since I've already got the win.
I would you're a better man than I would say fuck him. I'm pulling him. I'm pulling him.
I don't even think I can though, because I have a player on IR who's not eligible for IR, and so I can't make any roster moves. So I don't know if I can.
That's tough.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I don't think he's gonna fumble either. I think you're gonna be fine.
I think he's gonna go for 3 touchdowns. So
yeah, maybe you just extend your lead and you win by like 1 million points.
Yeah. There is incentive in this league to be the highest scorer in the week. You get $10. So
for $10, it's worth it.
Yeah, F it. Let's go for $10.
So anyway, yes, Giants potentially ruining the tank here. Any final thoughts before we switch over and talk about the Jets coaching search getting underway?
I think it's very interesting, the reaction to this game. There's like 99% of Giants fans who are pissed off over the Giants winning. There is a 1% that's just happy to see the team win. I think it's really telling, though, that Michael Strahan yesterday on Fox said, this is the one game I didn't want the Giants to win. I mean, when Strahan says it, I think Giants fans can feel validated, feel all right about rooting for a loss here. Even Strahan was rooting for a damn loss. So I think that tells you everything you need to know. This was a very detrimental victory, and I hope that the Giants are able to find a way out of this mess because they've created an even messier situation than the one they already had.
Yeah, if you have a legend of your franchise being like, that's one I wish we didn't have, then I think you could feel vindicated, rooting for the tank. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. We'll see how it plays out the final week of the year and where the Giants end up picking and where the Jets end up picking is going to be interesting too. They are right now, I believe, 6th, and they could get up as high as, or 7th right now, excuse me. They can get up as high as 2 and fall as far as number 9. So interesting to watch for both of these teams here.
Yeah. And the last point that I'll make is with Shedeur, there was a lot of chatter early on in this process where Giants fans thought, well, Deion won't let his son play for the Giants. Now we're probably hoping that Deion doesn't let his son play for the Browns or Titans and wants to play for the Giants, which actually seems to be the case considering he was wearing Giants cleats on Saturday. So who knows? Maybe this whole conspiracy about he won't let his son play for certain teams, maybe he only wants his son to play for the Giants. Maybe we end up sticking and picking and still getting our guy. Who knows? Doubt it, but it's a possibility I thought I'd throw out there.
What was your take on the cleats on Saturday?
I think it's weird. Like, I straight up think it's very strange behavior. I think Giants fans are really into it and excited about it. It feels like he's trying to pressure the Giants into taking him. I don't know. It's just strange behavior. Like, what's with the obsession? I don't know. It's very weird.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was a weird look as well. Both quarterbacks had some narratives going around this weekend. How about Cam Ward only playing the half? That one I didn't mind as much as the as the cleats.
That's fine to me. I think there's a way that you can look at that from inside the Miami locker room. Is I really respect him for letting another guy get in there and get an opportunity. These are valuable reps in an exhibition game. Now the next guy up has some experience playing in that game, and next year maybe he can lead the team to more success. So I think there's a way to look at that with respect from Cam Ward. And at the same time, I mean, end of the day, he doesn't need to play that game in order to be a top pick. He shouldn't risk the injury. So, and he played really well in that first half. He put on a good show for NFL scouts who were there. So I don't have any problem with that. The Shedeur thing is weird. And I think Giants fans, Giants beat reporters, there's such a strange narrative building, like as if Shedeur Sanders is this Caleb Williams prospect. And he's not. He is not this surefire slam dunk number one pick, like obvious have to take him. I don't know why Giants, it's really the beat reporters are pushing this narrative. It's very strange to me. And the cleats had a lot to do with it. And I just don't know what's going on. I think the whole situation is strange.
Very strange. I agree with you on that one. So let's get over to the Jets side of things. They had a horrible blowout loss to the Buffalo Bills. But today we got some news on the coaching search. They are interviewing Ron Rivera. We'll start there. I really hope this is not the direction that the Jets go at head coach. Ron Rivera is 102, 103, and 2 in his 13-year career. He did coach the Panthers to a Super Bowl in 2015. But if you look at his 13-year career, he only has 3 winning seasons, was coach of the year in 2 of those 3 winning seasons. But I think with especially how things went in Washington, there were some questionable roster decisions and player management decisions that I just frankly didn't agree with. And this would not move the needle for me at all. I would not be a fan of this hire.
I'll try and be a little bit more positive and say that I think he brings stability and experience. That's something that I know Jets fans maybe desire as a coach with some experience, but no, this wouldn't move the needle for me either. This is not a candidate that I'm excited about. I think Ron Rivera, like you just mentioned it, he led the Panthers to the Super Bowl in 2015. That's 10 years ago. So his best days are well behind him. And I don't know that first of all, why are they searching for head coaches right now? They don't have a GM. Is there anything that you can give me in terms of context and insight on this?
No, that's a very valid question, and one that a lot of Jets fans were asking. It seems to make sense that you would hire the GM first and then look for the head coach. They've spoken to a few different GMs so far. This is the first name that was mentioned for the Jets. Rex Ryan also said today on radio that he expects to talk to the Jets after the end of the season. But I don't know why they're doing both at the same time and not hiring the GM first and then that GM leading the search.
Yeah, it's a little bit confusing. I mean, I guess that you're getting these guys in here for preliminary meetings, Ron Rivera, that would be, and then the GM would then have to do a second interview. That feels a little bit redundant, though. It feels like a repetitive process. So I'm not sure that I understand the 33rd team's vision with this, but man, well, I guess we'll find out. I mean, I know that you can't coach any of the legitimate candidates until next week anyway. So we'll see who the Jets add to their search then. But yeah, Ron Rivera, I mean, I saw him in the division with the Giants, with Washington. He is at this stage in his career, to me, at the best, getting you to a wild card game. I don't think that he's going to actually return your franchise to the pinnacle of success. I don't think it's possible for him anymore. I think Ron Rivera is one of the most respected coaches and arguably one of the best coaches of the last several decades. He's a great guy and a great football mind, but his ceiling is absolutely capped. And maybe if you're making the argument for the Jets that you want a higher floor than a higher ceiling, I guess he's interesting, but I just don't think that he fixes the fundamental problems that the Jets have in their organization.
I don't know. The floor was pretty low the last year in Washington, right? He's a defensive guy, and they had the worst defense in the league last year. They were 32. So, like, I don't know. And they were 4-13. The draft picks, too, if you look at some of the first-round picks that the Commanders had during his tenure, like, almost none of them really worked out all that well. Chase Young, second overall, Jamin Davis, Jahan Dotson, Emmanuel Forbes. I don't think that's, and all of those were top 20 picks, and any of those 4 guys don't really stand out to you as, massive hits to the roster.
Yeah, I think there you have to question how much of it was Ron Rivera and how much of it was their current GM. I don't remember who their GM was at the time. It's really tough to tell who deserves more blame for draft misses in that regard. I think that Ron Rivera probably gets somewhat of a pass. I would assume that it was the GM who picked the wrong players, but I also think you could give blame to Ron Rivera for not maximizing the talent of those players. Maybe they were good players, just drafted into the wrong situation. So I don't know. It's tough to say, but you do make a great point. Like, would the floor be that much higher? Defensive coach, and his defense was terrible his last year in Washington. Extremely valid concern.
Yeah, the first year he was an interim GM and head coach, and then the GM went a different direction in 21. But my assumption was that he still had a lot of say in the roster. Like, if you were a GM in year one and then they hire someone else the following year, I would think that someone at that level would still have a lot of input on the roster. And it felt like they were going very defense heavy in those drafts. They weren't really attacking at least the offensive line, which they were never really able to figure out during his tenure. They had a lot of defensive line picks, and some of the defensive picks on the line ended up being pretty good. Unfortunately, Chase Young, wasn't one of those for them. He's kind of bounced around the league now a little bit. And hasn't lived up to the potential that everyone thought he was going to. And I just thought he used some guys in not the correct way. Like, Emmanuel Forbes was this really good zone corner coming out, and then they had him playing man coverage, and they're shocked that it didn't work. And the Jets haven't done a good job of maximizing their talent, and I don't think Ron Rivera is going to be that guy.
I agree with you. I don't think Ron Rivera is going to be that guy. I think that if you want to go this route of a CEO type coach who has a lot of say in the front office and is defensive minded, it's going to be who Fierce Grim just mentioned. It's Mike Vrabel. I think that very similar archetype of head coach. One of them is clearly better than the other and has had more success more recently than the other. And Mike Vrabel has had a lot more recent success than Ron Rivera did. So that would be the route that I would rather go. Again, I think Ron Rivera is a great coach and a great person, but it's just not a good fit for the New York Jets.
No, I don't think so either. But I guess let's get to the second one here with Rex Ryan expecting to talk to the New York Jets next week. I guess we should just call the search over, because Rex earlier in the season said that if he gets an interview, he'll get the job because he'll be able to convince Woody Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the case, I don't know. How do you feel? Are you rioting at MetLife? I have to imagine.
I would not be happy. I would not. A lot of Jet, not a lot. There is a very loud portion of Jet fans that would be very, very happy. And I don't want this to turn into I hate Rex Ryan. I don't. I very much so appreciate what he did for my franchise. Give me my two best years of fandom in 2009 and 2010. But I think we're being very short-sighted and looking at only the beginning of his tenure, not how his tenure continued to go on after that, when he got more say in the roster, and how things ended in Buffalo, which was not very good. And he's been out of the league for almost 10 years. So it would feel like going backwards to me.
Yeah, I know initially when this idea was brought up last month or the month before, whenever it was, I was like, you know what, screw it, I'll get behind it. No, I'm not behind it. With Rex Ryan, he's such a circus and a personality, and the Jets this year have just been a circus. They have been a media shitstorm. It's been one hit piece after another. It's been one wild report that embarrasses the organization, after another. Rex Ryan doesn't fix that. In fact, he probably makes it worse. And I think they need to bring in a coach that brings true stability. Rex Ryan might stabilize the culture in some way or whatever and yada, yada. But in reality, he makes this team a real mess and a clown show once again. And I think that's what the Jets need to avoid.
Exactly. That's what I want to see the Jets go away from a little bit, is especially with, Rodgers the last couple of years, they've had a lot of attention on them, and it hasn't always been positive attention. And I just want someone to come in here and stabilize things a little bit. I don't think that's what Rex is. And again, love him for what he was able to do. He was a lot of fun when he was here as the Jets head coach, but we're going into 2025. I would really like to go with a more modern approach, either someone who's had success in this league within the last 5 years. I like Mike Vrabel. I like Brian Flores as options. And if you're going to go with a first-time head coach hire, I would like it to be on the offensive side of the ball for a change. Like, I know a lot of Jet fans really love the idea of bringing in Aaron Glenn, defensive coordinator from the Lions, because he's a former Jet, had a lot of success with the Jets, knows the organization, all that stuff. But I'd probably rather go like a Liam Cohen route, something like that, over a first-time defensive coordinator being the head coach.
Yeah, and I don't blame you. And I threw out this name for the Giants recently that I think is also a name to consider for the Jets. It's not a first-time head coach. It would be a second-chance head coach, offensive coordinator for the Commanders. I like Cliff Kingsbury. I think that he makes a lot of sense for both of these teams. A guy who has head coaching experience, failed, sure, but could be looking for a second opportunity. We've seen coaches bounce to a second team and have better opportunity or a better success in that new opportunity. Kingsbury's offenses are great. Every quarterback that he touches turns to gold. It's just about the other things. And has he figured those out in the meantime? Possibly, possibly not. I don't know if the Jets or the Giants are going to be the teams willing to take a chance on Kingsbury, but I actually think he deserves a lot more buzz for head coaching job than he's getting. I mean, there's a lot of teams, or there's a lot of candidates getting buzz that probably shouldn't get as much buzz as they're getting. Kingsbury's not getting enough, in my opinion.
So the Jets interviewed him in 2019, the year they ended up going with Adam Gase instead. So I kind of wonder, and I feel the same way about Todd Monken, like if he would go back to them after they already passed on him the first time. I think I like Monken more than Kingsbury, which is ironic because Kingsbury actually has been a head coach in the NFL before, where Monken hasn't. And you bring up some good points. Like if the Jets are drafting a quarterback this year, maybe it makes sense to have a guy like Kingsbury who's had success with young quarterbacks in this league. But there are some things outside of just, the offense that I don't love about Cliff Kingsbury.
He's not perfect by any means. He's definitely got his faults. But I also think that the ceiling is really high for him. And at his best, he is the QB guru in many ways, and he really knows how to develop a quarterback talent. And that's why for the Giants, I'm like, God damn it, we're going to be taking a quarterback in this draft, and we better develop him properly. So I'm like, screw it, bring in the best quarterback developer in the world. Like, arguably, he's one of the best. So not the best, but he's one of them. So that's my take on that. But you mentioned something there. Jets might be drafting a quarterback. The Jets are probably moving on from Aaron Rodgers. I hope he doesn't play next week. Let Tyrod Taylor play. Let a legitimate quarterback play, because Aaron Rodgers is no longer a legitimate quarterback. I am so sick and tired of him. The video of him yesterday walking through the tunnel with the boombox and Gangsta's Paradise playing was embarrassing. I cringed so bad seeing that video. I'm so sick and tired. I'm not even a Jets fan, and I'm sick and tired of Aaron Rodgers. I'm tired of his shit, and I want him gone. Get him out of New York. Just retire. Go do something else with your life. Stop ruining NFL franchises right now. The Jets need to reboot, and these coaches that they're currently talking to, Ron Rivera, Rex Ryan, who they're going to speak to, Rex Ryan wants to keep Aaron Rodgers. Isn't that what he said on TV? So,
yeah,
no. Anybody who wants to keep Aaron Rodgers off the table, bring in a quarterback mind, a developer, and bring in a new quarterback. Get rid of this guy. He's such a clown show. I'm so sick and tired of him.
It was a really rough outing for him in Buffalo. The walking on the field with the boombox was pretty embarrassing. The effort as a whole against Buffalo was embarrassing. Had a couple bad picks. One of them was deflected, but it was a screen going to Davante Adams. And when you know that, as soon as Morgan Moses leaves with injury, they insert Carter Warren, who misses a rudimentary, the first thing you learn on the offensive line when you're throwing a screen pass is you have to lock up with the defensive lineman so that they don't get their hands up and block it. Instead, he drops into pass pro, which leads Greg Rousseau, who's like 6'9", just to put his hand up and tip the ball. So frustrating stuff there, but it was a really, really bad Aaron Rodgers showing. I think for most people, it put to bed the narrative of him coming back next year. But I think you'd be surprised. There's still a portion of Jets fans who want to run this back next year. I am not one of them. I'm over it. Unfortunately, Aaron Rodgers is already slated in to start next week. Jeff Ulbrich said so. Rodgers said so. He's sitting on passing touchdown number 499. He is waiting to get number 500. It's got to go to Davante Adams. I wouldn't be surprised if against Miami he throws a touchdown pass in the first quarter and then that's it, just goes off into the sunset forever. We did see some Tyrod yesterday, and we need to be clear. It was against second and third stringers on Buffalo. They moved the ball, and he scored 2 touchdowns. So I don't know. I like Tyrod, but we got to be careful anointing him after 2 drives against the Bills' third teamers in garbage time.
I think he showed more in those drives against the third stringers and the Bills, whatever backups, than Aaron Rodgers has shown. I mean, I don't know. I like Tyrod Taylor a lot. I think he deserves an opportunity. And the fact that he was actually able to get the ball to Garrett Wilson is nice. There's clearly some sort of problem between Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson that's continuing to bubble. They need to fix that. Garrett Wilson is too talented of a player to trade out of the building and to let walk out of the door. And if Tyrod Taylor playing in Week 18 is one of the ways to smooth things over with Garrett Wilson, then screw it. Start Tyrod Taylor. I think that's what you have to do. But I just don't know how you can keep trotting Rodgers out there. I think it's a joke. I mean, it's disrespectful to the fans, in my opinion. And he's just so bad at this point in his career, and trying to let him chase these records. He's not a franchise legend. He's an NFL legend, but he is not a Jets legend. Jets don't owe him anything. And I think this whole saga has just gotten out of control.
It has gotten out of control, and that's where I am. Like they tried it, it didn't work. I understand his stats are okay. They're better than anything we've seen in recent Jets history. Arguably the best quarterback season since Ryan Fitzpatrick's 2015. And it's going to rank very high, which is sad for Jets quarterback seasons. But at the end of the day, I don't think the extracurriculars are worth the production. Like if he's going to be the 22nd best quarterback in the NFL, I don't want to deal with the extra stuff. If he was a top 10 quarterback and the Jets were, not 4-12 and instead 12-4 going into this final game, then yeah, that's a completely different story, but that's not the reality. I know the coaching stinks. I know the defense stinks. All those things are true and can be true. And at the same time, I just don't think it makes sense for them to run it back with Aaron Rodgers. I really don't.
I don't know either. I guess the only argument that you can make for Rodgers isn't even an argument in favor of Rodgers. It's just who is your other option. And I hate when it comes down to that. When you just have to stick with something because you don't know who the other options are, that means you're sticking with something that's not very good in the first place. It's the same argument that people are making for Brian Dable. Well, if you fire Dable, then who are you going to hire to replace him? I don't know, but I want to fire Dable. You don't have to just stick with him because of the uncertainty. Things are uncertain enough if you stick with Aaron Rodgers. So I think that you have to move on, turn the page, and hopefully start writing a new chapter is my opinion.
I agree. So it's going to be interesting to see how that new chapter goes. One more week. Jets going up against division rival Miami Dolphins at home. Giants on the road against the Philadelphia Eagles. And then it's the offseason time. And we get to crank it up and have some fun, which I'm looking forward to. I can't wait. I'm sure you feel the same way. Excuse me. I can't wait for this season to end and just be over with.
I can't wait. I'm so tired of the season. But I was really excited for it to end and us to officially clinch the number 1 pick. It's not going to happen now, most likely. So it's very unfortunate. But yeah, I just need this. This season has been a disaster. 10 straight games losing. I need it over with. I'm trying to fall asleep and wake up in April.
Sounds like a plan to me. Guys, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you are new. Follow Anthony's work over on Fireside Giants. You can find me at Matt O'Leary NY. That'll do it. I'm Matt. He's Anthony, and we'll catch you next time.